But it is a crossroads. Because if you keep the commandments, if you do the things you're supposed to do, if you sort your own life out and you live as you know you should be living, your life will turn around. It's very rare, by the way, that you come across a person who's doing everything right and their life is still going to trash. It happens, especially in a short term, not necessarily in a long term, but it does happen once in a while, but it is pretty rare. For the most part, if you're doing the things that you're supposed to be doing, things are going to go pretty well for you. And that's exactly the same message that we could take for modern times today. The reason that our lives are not going well is because we're not doing the things that we know we should be doing. It isn't like there's some kind of hidden knowledge or some kind of a secret message behind all of it. But we don't like hearing that. And when someone comes along and tells us that, we slay them. It's not that we reject them. It's not that we're like, nah, you're not really a prophet. That's the part that scares us, is because we know that they're telling the truth. And it's like, how much do we have to do? Well, I don't know. What kind of results do you want? Do you want everything to go well? Then you need to do everything right. If you want half of the things to go well, then I guess you do half of the things right. So it's not that we accept a prophet and slay them. It's not that we go, okay, we know that, and we kill them. No, we love them after they're dead, especially if we've tortured them to death. Well, why would we have tortured them to death? Because we probably knew. It probably really pissed us off that person came along and told us the truth. It must not have made us laugh in the process. So if you're going to tell the truth, make them laugh. That way you can live longer. Or get a record deal. Let your family make some money afterwards. But Nietzsche does predict a lot of what happens in the 20th century. He looks at the state of humanity. He says, this is where humans are right now. This is where we were before that. So he can see the trend. And he says that here's where I can see humanity transforming into right now. So he predicts, the whole beginning of the 20th century, he predicts the world wars. He predicts the rise of communism. He predicts the hundreds of millions of people murdered by it. He predicts a lot of it, man. Now, it's not that he, it's not that he again gets a message from God. Of course, he doesn't. He's a rabid atheist. He doesn't believe in God at all. But if Nietzsche then said, and I believe that 200 years from now, this is what's going to happen, we have a good reason to believe what Nietzsche said, because he predicted the next, the 50 years after his death pretty well. So you might say, well, he was right about this, so he's, it's a good chance he's going to be right about the rest of it as well. So a prophet is just someone who can maybe tell us the future. Now, having said that, what kind of messages do prophets usually deliver?
Something that salvation.
Something about salvation. So if you need salvation, what does that mean you presently are right now?
The same.
You need to be saved from something. So for example, when we refer to Jesus as Jesus Christ, what does the word Christ mean? Well, it's a Greek word. It means Christos. Christos is the Hebrew word, the equivalent of there is Mashiach, which essentially means Messiah, like a messenger, a Messiah. Well, what the heck is a Messiah? A Messiah was somebody who the Jews believed would show up at a time when Israel was in really bad shape and would deliver them out of their difficulties. So when Jesus shows up, he wasn't the only one who claimed to be the Messiah. There were several people around, actually during his lifetime, and some people before and some people after him who were claiming to be the Messiah. So how is it that the Jews were supposed to recognize him? They believed it was going to be a person who'd show up at this difficult time, which, first century AD was a very difficult time. They were under Roman occupation. Shortly after his life, shortly after he died, about 35 years after he died or so, the Jews were kicked out of Israel. It's called the diaspora. They were dispersed all over the world. That's actually, by the way, a big part of the problem that we have right now in the Middle East. The Jews were kicked out of Israel, and then the Romans renamed the province Palestina after the ancient enemies of the Jews, the Philistines. They were wiped out in 1000 BC, so over 1,000 years earlier, they were wiped out. They didn't exist anymore. So the Romans, as a big F you to the Jews, renamed the region after their ancient enemies to try to erase any remembrance of them. So today, that's where we get the word Palestinians from, people who were born in that region. It's not a country, it's a region. So that's part of the fight that's going on there right now today. But the idea is that Jesus shows up. the Jews were like, oh my goodness, we need to get rid of these Romans, and you're here to be a military leader. So the only reason that you would need a leader to lead you out of difficult times is because you're presently in difficult times. The only reason that you would need a savior or you need salvation is if you're in a state right now where you need to be saved. You don't show up and to people who are doing really, really well and say, I'm here to help you, I'm here to save you. They're like, no, we're doing pretty well already as we are, thanks. Fine. So a prophet is a person who comes along and delivers a message of, you better stop doing what you're doing, because what you're doing right now is going to lead to disaster. They deliver a message like that, a message of warning, condemnation. If you don't change, this is how you're going to end up. So people don't accept the prophets, and they don't accept them and say, wow, you are a prophet. Let's kill him. They reject him as prophets because they don't, going back to what you guys were saying, they're not hearing what they want to hear. They're hearing something other than what they want to hear. What we want to hear is, why is my life going badly right now? I'll tell you why my life is going badly right now. It's the Romans. It's their fault. It's society's fault. It's my neighbor's fault. It's my government's fault. Because that firmly takes the responsibility out of us. But what a prophet does, the prophet comes along and says, do you know why your life isn't going well right now? Why? Because you're not keeping the commandments of God like you're supposed to. That's the only reason the Romans have occupied you, is because you didn't keep the commandments the way you're supposed to. It's your fault. The only reason your life is not going well right now is because you're lazy and you're self-entitled. If you fix the laziness and you fix the self-entitlement, your life will turn around. If you decide to keep the commandments of God, then your life will turn around. We don't like hearing that kind of stuff, but it is a crossroads. Because if you keep the commandments, if you do the things you're supposed to do, if you sort your own life out and you live as you know you should be living, your life will turn around. It's very rare, by the way, that you come across a person who's doing everything right and their life is still going to trash. It happens, especially in a short term, not necessarily in a long term, but it does happen once in a while, but it is pretty rare. For the most part, if you're doing the things that you're supposed to be doing, things are going to go pretty well for you. And that's a recurring theme throughout all of these religious texts. It doesn't matter if it's Christianity or Judaism or Islam or if it's Hinduism. People always find themselves in difficult times, and they always find themselves suffering because they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And that's exactly the same message that we could take for modern times today. The reason that our lives are not going well is because we're not doing the things that we know we should be doing. It isn't like there's some kind of hidden knowledge or some kind of a secret message behind all of it. But we don't like hearing that. And when someone comes along and tells us that, we slay them. It's not that we reject them. It's not that we're like, nah, you're not really a prophet. That's the part that scares us, is because we know that they're telling the truth. If somebody walks in here right now and hands me an orange slip, yeah, and it says Scanlon, that's what it says. That's not true. Let's go kill her. Why would I want to kill her? Because it is true. If she handed me this slip right here and it said, Scanlon, Santa Claus is coming to get you later on today. Is Santa Claus coming for me? No. Santa Claus says you are a terrible person. You will get no presents for Christmas. I would first say every day is Christmas, as we know. But I would reject that because I don't believe in Santa Claus. I wouldn't be angry about it. We only get angry about those kinds of things when we know that they're true. Asterisk. I shouldn't say only, but largely. Because of course it does frustrate us when we feel like we're doing everything that we can to turn our lives around, to do well. Now, when someone comes along and can point out, yeah, but you're not doing this, you're not doing this, you're not doing this, well, then we get angry. Not just because we're being made to feel like we're not good enough and doing enough, but also because we do know that it's true. We could possibly be doing more. And it's like, how much do we have to do? Well, I don't know. What kind of results do you want? Do you want everything to go well? Then you need to do everything right. Do you want half of the things to go well? Then I guess you do half of the things right. But that's why we slay them, because we acknowledge that. But he says we love our martyrs, and we worship those that we have tortured to death. And that's a retrospective thing. Going back to the example that you used, when Jesus dies, how many people are present at the cross when he dies? Not even that many. Less than half that many. Very few. what, 4 or 5 people are there when he dies. That's it. Why? Because he's alive. Once he dies, then we find out that, like, within days of his death, a whole bunch of people had gathered together in his name. Like, say, where were you guys all? A couple of days ago when he died, where were you guys? Yeah, I was busy that day. I was picking up my dry cleaning. I didn't know he was gonna die. I wasn't aware of it. But you call yourselves after him, right? You guys call yourselves Christians. You say you follow him. Well, we weren't gonna follow him to death, but that's exactly what they're charged with. They were told to do that, but they rejected it. And then today, for a guy who died with just a handful of people by his side, and 2 thieves by his sides, by the way, today he has over, 1.5 billion people around the world who call themselves after him? That's pretty phenomenal, man. That's pretty phenomenal. But when was he loved? After he was dead. Once we looked at the body and we're like, you know what? He's dead. My life isn't really any better for him being dead. Now that I'm thinking about it, he had some points. And then once they're gone, now we can feel bad about it, or maybe not, but just kind of worship a person who's dead, because, isn't that what we typically do? Isn't it true that death makes angels of us all? And then, whenever someone dies, we're not supposed to talk badly about them, but as soon as they die, we're like, wow, you know what? What a wonderful person. Think about when a musician dies. Well, man, the record company, I just think about those meetings after a famous musician dies. Can you imagine those meetings? Finally, at last, a dead star. Let's repackage all the old stuff, put new covers on it, let's re-release, let's remaster everything and re-release it. You're making millions off of that dead star. That's when we love people. Someone told me, nobody cares unless you're pretty or dying. And if you're pretty and dead, well, geez. Hopefully you have a record deal at that point. At least your family will get some of it. But yeah, this is the thing, man. You think about Muhammad. Muhammad had a lot of followers in his life. That's true. They call him the prophet of Islam. But man, today, over 1 billion. Think about that, dude. 8 billion people on the planet. About 3 billion of them are Christians or Muslims. That's a lot of people, man. It's a lot of people who follow somebody in death. And today, if you can release a song and get 1 million people to listen to it, you're platinum. That's it, 1 million out of 8 billion people. So it's not that we accept a prophet and slay them. It's not that we go, okay, we know that we kill them. No, we love them after they're dead, especially if we've tortured them to death. Well, why would we have tortured them to death? Because we probably knew. It probably really pissed us off that person came along and told us the truth. It must not have made us laugh in the process. So if you're going to tell the truth, make them laugh. That way you can live longer. Or get a record deal. Let your family make some money afterwards. So, questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Short. Happy Tuesday.